All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Yes, indeed. Is 10 minutes after the hour late enough for you people? Everyone who said I was too on time. Look at that. A gift for all of you. 10 minutes after the hour. It's the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Michael Shure. Here on a Friday, it is the last show we will be doing with President Joseph R. Biden. And I know that doesn't make a lot of people a lot of happy, but facts are facts. So we'll be talking about President Biden during this hour. We have coming up later on the show, Ben Jacobs, a fantastic political reporter who will do the job that I ordinarily do on Fridays and talk about politics. And then we will be going to, later in the show, to the culture blaster, Michael Snyder, tell us about movies and TV. I before we get into stuff, I want to acknowledge Wes Thierry, a $5 super sticker, and then Peter Newton. Peter Newton, obviously someone who likes his 48 seconds of sports. Will Ovi do it? All caps, all Jaden, just 8 seconds for Ovi and 5 for the Commanders. Hail DVM. So here is what he's talking about. He's talking about Alexander Ovechkin, and Ovechkin's strive to become the leading goal scorer in NHL history. He is 20 away, having scored an overtime game winner. I think it was overtime, might have been late third, but I think it was an overtime game winner to lead the Caps to victory. It's an exciting thing whenever you see a record that is held by someone who has the esteem of Wayne Gretzky broken or threatening to be broken. That's exciting. So yeah, looking at that, looking at the Commanders, there you see Ovi right there, and a little bit younger with a beard that didn't have quite as much gray in it. I don't know what that would ever be like, but so pretty exciting times in Washington because the Commanders now have moved on in the playoffs. We have a huge playoff weekend. Tony, what do we think? Your Super Bowl final you mentioned was?
Oh, it'd be fun to see Lions and Bills. Just that would make people mad.
Yeah, it would. It would.
And I just don't want to see the Chiefs again. It's like,
you can we doing our 48 seconds?
Come back next year. It's cool.
We're opening, it turns out, with 48 seconds because Peter Newton gave $8. We will go to the show, but I mean, come on, we only have a few seconds for you, Kim, to say who's going to win the Super Bowl. Who's going to win this weekend? We can push the Super Bowl down the line.
I don't even know who's playing in the Super Bowl. If you ask me any football question, I'll just say 49ers.
And that's the right answer. It's always the right answer.
I don't think they did very well this year. That's all I know.
They didn't. All right. It's always the right answer. So we've now dispatched with 48 seconds. Thank you, Peter Newton. Candace, thank you so much. Candace Worthman, $9.99, a super sticker. And then, of course, Trevor Starr in Hollywood. Well, democracy was nice while it lasted. Well, in that vein, you still have a great weekend of democracy, Trevor. So enjoy it. And thanks always for being so generous with the show. As we gear toward next week, one of the sort of fascinating and kind of funny things that came out was the official portrait of Donald Trump that he's going to be using as his inauguration portrait. And it reminds a lot of people of a certain other portrait that we've seen. And that was an unusual presidential portrait because it was a mugshot. And Donald Trump's mugshot and this presidential portrait with that evil eye and winking and looking serious, wearing a blue, not a red tie, in which we ordinarily see him. Do we have, Tony, do we have that, the mugshot anywhere accessible? So that we can see, there it is, right? I mean, that's essentially the same shot, except he's got a red tie on. And that's his presidential portrait. Presidential portraits, I should tell you, often look a little bit more like the portraits of, say, happy, smiling, I don't know, any president.
He looks very sinister, does he not? Like with the one eyebrow
he looks
raised.
Sinister. This is very... I mean, I'm saying it, but it's very dictatorial, where they didn't smile and they were official portraits, even almost regnal. I mean, those sorts of things are the very serious portraits that you would see kings have sometimes. And then And then let's look at some of what we have with previous presidents, right? I mean, Barack Obama, soft smile, looking good, not looking out. Look at Joe Biden, happy to have the job and to lead the American people. And then also, I think we have Jimmy Carter. Obviously, that was his default face. What do they say? His resting face was a smile like that. But these are your presidents, right? These are the people you want to sort of engage you. Even Donald Trump in his first term did better than, look at that. Smile, happy, right?
Much more normal in that one.
He did.
And then we got this one with the raised eyebrow. He looks like he's planning something horrible.
Right. Well, I mean, it looks like. I think that you may be onto something. It's a very and there's not a lot of Bill Clinton smiling, of course, curiously in black and white, even though Jimmy Carter was in color. But I think we don't see a lot of smiles from Trump generally. He does not seem to laugh a lot. He and his wife are not seen laughing the way we're accustomed to seeing, every other presidential couple virtually. I mean, the Bidens, the Bushes, the Obamas, the Clintons, there was laughter. You don't see that with the Trumps necessarily. So, this is not a happy portrait. And what's more is that he approved it, right? So he saw this and said, great, this is going to be our presidential portrait. Let's go with it.
Okay. Oh, there's Vance.
Yeah, there's J.D. Vance, Vice President-elect Vance.
I mean, it's a weird day when Vance looks more normal than Trump.
Yeah, it's possibly, but yeah, I mean, he just he at least he looks happy to be leading the American people, as opposed to Donald Trump, who looks like he's on a mission. And it's, there it is. It's like almost Uncle Sam, like, we want you, right?
Does it look like AI? It doesn't look like a regular photograph. It looks like they use some type of weird, in both Vance and Trump's thing. It looks like they did something weird with the background.
Yeah.
They're outlined against some background.
It's actually
their back.
Yeah, it's actually Catherine, Princess of Wales. It's not Trump at all. It's they're totally.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there they are, enjoying a light moment. I mean, it's just not
holding hands. Well, she has gloves on. She probably wouldn't touch him with her bare skin. So.
Well, he's probably freezing, and that's why. But yeah, it's. Well, look, what are we going to say? It's only a photograph, but it says a lot. And the fact that, so many of the people that support him would wear with pride his mugshot, innocent or prisoner of the state or whatever. And it's, the fact that this is kind of what he wants to portray is interesting, that he wants to go back to that mugshot as if it's a source of pride rather than shame. Hand it to him. It's worked. Whatever he's done has worked. He got reelected. He was elected in the first place, and whoever it is that he's appealing to, it's working. And there you have your presidential portrait. Enough for the moment for the president-elect. Let's talk a bit about the president. Joe Biden, Kim, has been busy at the end of his term. He had to postpone, or actually not postpone, he had to cancel a trip to the Vatican and to Rome, which was going to be his final overseas trip. But the fires here in California but they prevented that from happening. So he canceled that trip, but he's been active. Yesterday, commuting 2,500, I think today, commuting 2,500 nonviolent drug offenders sentences as one of his final acts of presidency. We talked yesterday with David Katz about the notion that he would probably hand out more pardons, and I suspect he will, but this is 2,500 nonviolent drug offenders, and the people that were getting these commutations have been serving disproportionately long sentences compared to the sentences they would receive today under current law, policy, and practice, said the president in his statement. So, it's the end of a 50-year political career, which we'll look at in just a moment. But these commutations are, in essence, He authored the crime bill in the Senate in 1994, and that led to a lot of these disproportionate incarceration. So he is granting clemency to these people and doing it in a way that sort of apologizes for a bill he co-authored in the United States Senate, which at that time was looked at, the crime bill was looked at as revolutionary and important. And with time, we see that it was not, in fact, an effective piece of legislation because of what it did in terms of disproportionate incarceration, especially with communities of color. Again, we expect to see more pardons and the fair sentencing that has happened in Congress since dictated that these were appropriate. Kim?
And he can sign these commutations and pardons right up until the moment that Trump is sworn in, right? Is that how it goes?
Yes, he can do it. He can do it until Trump takes the oath of office. He's the president until noon on Monday, and then at 12:01, Donald Trump will take over. They try and keep it to that schedule, but if it's a few minutes earlier or a few minutes later, it's like the Mark Thompson show, right? You don't want it to be right on time. Have
That's
as long
exactly
as right. And so so they that's the way it works. And the president has presidential power, pardon power, until he's no longer president. Never seen it done from the inauguration. And it's the inauguration now moving inside.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, and so maybe because the inauguration's inside, they'll be closer to some of those, some of the switches of power, the levers of power in which to do it. Yeah, Trump has decided
to do.
What
will he do? I mean, how do you fit massive crowds inside Michael Shure?
You don't.
It won't be the biggest celebration in history.
Well, I think they're trying to avoid, as we talked about yesterday, the William Henry Harrison situation, where William Henry Harrison contracted pneumonia and died. It's meant to be very cold. And so he has said, I've ordered the inauguration address in addition to prayers and other speeches to be delivered in the Capitol Rotunda. So perhaps they'll be sworn inside or maybe sworn in outside and moved back inside. I just don't know, but there will be a rally the next day, and of course there's always an inaugural parade. So we'll see kind of how that goes, but for now it also makes it a little easier on the Secret Service when you do that, and the Capitol Police. So Albert Fiscaletti says the cold is not the issue. I'm sure that the threat alerts are very high. What do you think? I doubt the cold is to blame. I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt what Albert's saying. I think I don't know. It's freezing out there. And it's been talked about before that why do we do this outside? And then everybody says we have to do it outside for the people. And we just saw sort of Jimmy Carter's inauguration happened on a very cold day. He got out of the car and walked part of that route so famously and iconically looked at. And we saw it a lot over the weekend with his memorials. And then, Barack Obama's was probably the coldest in recent history, his first inauguration, but people were seeing outside. I mean, there were famous photos of people, their tears freezing on their face because they were excited that Obama won, but it was damn cold outside. And so now, Vilma Devlin asks, I wonder if a president would void another president's pardon. You can't do it once a president is hands down a pardon. That pardon is binding. So otherwise, it would be done constantly. They would undo it. Noah Marie Clarity, $4.99. Thank you so much for that donation. The super chat. Would love to see him pardoning Trump's enemies front row at the inauguration. 11:59. Liz Cheney. Yeah,
that'd be pretty good.
Right. He doesn't give an address that day, does the outgoing president. But yeah, he could include that in some way. The preemptive pardons are probably being talked about as we're sitting here talking about the temperature at the Capitol. But there are some people who don't want them, who feel that it implies wrongdoing or is in somehow an admission of guilt. It would save a lot of headache, though, if he did it. If he did that. Santi M says he's a big sissy, a wuss for going inside. Well, it is freezing, but yeah, you can say what you will. I think that they say it will be among the coldest inauguration days in the past 50 years or something. So, and I think that that's really probably the bottom line. A lot of old people, including the man leaving and the man arriving into the presidency, are going to be there that day, and it's when it's unbearably cold. That Trump's inauguration drink is called the Make America Smashed Again. It's a White Russian with pumpkin spice. Well, anything to numb for some people. We have Trevor Starr. Thank you for this $10.10 donation, the super chat. Michael, how likely do you think it is that Trump will pull a Nixon and resign so that Vance will pardon him? I love these conversations because they're interesting and how would it work. First of all, I don't presuppose that was part of Nixon's resignation plan. I do think that they knew that he would be impeached, and that's not how he wanted to go out. And maybe I'm one of the few people on this air and in this chat. I think Gerald Ford was an honest man and a good man, and I don't think that he would have taken that deal at that time. And I think that he made the decision to pardon based not on a deal that had been struck. But there are certainly reasons to disagree with me. But a lot of the historians take Ford at his word. That said, I would see something more nefarious with Trump being possible. I don't think that that there would be a. I think that Vance, were he to become president, would not necessarily pardon Trump, because I think that he would want to then become. He would want to run for president. That would happen at a time when he'd be running for president. And Gerald Ford, to his credit, by pardoning Nixon, knew that there would be political suicide, and it was. So I would imagine the same would hold for J.D. Vance if he were to do the same thing. But again, that's what I like these conversations, because. Yeah, maybe I could see it. I could see it possibly happening, and I wouldn't put anything by this crew. And that's, I see them differently. I see the old guard people like Gerald Ford. Someone writes, Teresa wrote, I met Ford. He was an idiot. Yeah, I did too, and I didn't find him to be an idiot, but people found him to be more dull than others. I mean, Nixon was an exceedingly bright guy, and so after Nixon, his kind of it was a different kind of, I would say, international intellect. Karen Jennings, thank you for the super sticker, $9.99. Love all this support. Love the support you've all been giving, both to me and to the show. Gregory says, Ford, honest, he was on the Warren Commission. Well, he was on the Warren Commission, but what the Warren Commission had before them and what they wanted to say, again, historians differed on that as well. But I do think that he was an honest guy, an honest broker. But I understand why people would be suspicious because of the pardon, because of the Warren Commission. But I don't think that, I think he had real integrity as a president. And I think that his friendship with Jimmy Carter, that we've also heard so much about recently, speaks to that. I don't think Jimmy Carter sort of suffered dishonest fools, and I think that he saw in Gerald Ford someone who was not that. But again, everybody's entitled to believe what they want to believe, and a lot of it's believable too, just because I don't agree with it. So, Kim, I hear you posturing to say something.
Oh, was I? I just have an announcement, which is completely off topic. It is Tony's birthday today.
I'm gonna get to that, man. Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's Tony's birthday today. Yeah, so I would do that just about now. So look at that. It's Tony's birthday. Yeah. Happy birthday, Tony. January 17th, you get one more birthday with President Biden. How are you going to spend it?
I'm going to sit in darkness. Maybe have a slice of pizza. Because I'm tired.
Yeah, because you're exhausted, right? Isn't it funny what happens to birthdays? The more they add numbers to them, it's like, oh, I don't feel like doing anything. But no, really, happy birthday. It's great.
Thank you,
I actually love my birthday. It's a day where people celebrate you, and you should be celebrated. And everybody in the chat celebrating you. A lot of happy birthday, Tonys. Look at that.
I am invisible. I'm the producer. I exist backstage.
Stop it. You look so young, Kathy Lynch says. You don't know.
I am not.
Yes, you are. You're a young man. Teacher Lori, Tony, happy birthday! So many people. It's somebody's sister's birthday. Yes, it's my son's birthday. Noe Marie Clarity says it's my son's birthday and Michelle Obama's and Betty White. Happy birthday, Tony.
Well, it's also my
Yay.
sister's birthday too, because we were born the same day, 3 years apart.
Weird.
That's so wild. That's
And I have a
crazy.
cousin in Canada who's the same day as me. So, yeah.
That's great. Are you Canadian originally?
My mom is.
All right, cool.
My
Where
dad
in
is
Canada?
Italian.
So you must-
French Canada, like deepest, darkest forest of maple trees, Canada.
Oh wow, that's cool. That's great.
That's where my mom's from.
All right.
A little town
Oh,
called Lake Megantic. Yeah.
wow.
It's like
So-
3 houses and a church, kind of thing.
Yeah. So you have hockey in your blood, obviously.
Look at all the love you're getting, Tony. That's so nice. Hey.
I like it.
Happy birthday, my friend.
Yeah, happy birthday, Tony.
Thank you,
So
thank you,
I think
everybody. Thank you.
I think with that, I was going to open the news with the top story being that it's Tony's birthday, and I think there's a lot that's happening out here, and we have to talk about TikTok and those sorts of things. So I'm going to hand it over to you to do the news, and then we'll take a little sojourn to Florida.
I will do the news. Let's get it going, Tony.
All right. Yeah, it's your birthday. Stop slacking.
There it is. This is the news sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show. The nation's highest court is upholding the ban of Chinese-owned TikTok if it's not sold to a U.S. company. Law is set to take effect on Sunday. President-elect Trump is reportedly considering an executive order that would save this app that's been dubbed by many as a major national security threat. President Biden has said his administration will not enforce the ban of the ByteDance-owned app before he leaves office, but the Supreme Court is upholding it, so we'll see what happens with this. Top Israeli officials. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying that neither, like President Biden deferred and said, "I'll just let Trump deal with this," and nobody really quite knows what to do with it. It was very bipartisan in putting this legislation forward. So it's going to be a curious way out for whoever it is that decides to either extend this or actually put the ban into effect. But it's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of jobs for people who make their living on TikTok if were to be shut down with any kind of permanence.
Speaking of China, President-elect Trump says he spoke with Chinese President Xi Jinping today. He wrote on Truth Social, the call went well. They discussed trade, TikTok, and fentanyl. This coming just days ahead of Trump's inauguration on Monday. According to China, President Xi said both countries should continue to be partners and friends despite disagreements. Top Israeli officials are approving a ceasefire agreement and a hostage exchange with Hamas. Now, the full 33-member cabinet will vote to approve the deal sometime today. This comes after negotiators for Israel and Hamas reportedly signed off on the deal. Multiple reports say the deal was signed today in Qatar by officials from Israel, Hamas, the United States, and Qatar. So, crews still fighting wildfires across the Los Angeles area. Some 40,000 acres are still actively on fire. The Palisades fire burning near the coast, 31% contained now. The Eaton fire in and around Altadena and Pasadena, 65% contained as well. While officials investigate the cause of these fires, which have killed at least 27 people and destroyed thousands of structures, the cleanup efforts are already underway. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem on Capitol Hill today facing questions as she seeks to be confirmed as the new Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. She appeared before the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. President-elect Trump nominated Noem last November, and I don't know how contentious this one is. I haven't seen anything, but I know that we'll maybe showcase a little bit of this confirmation hearing video as we go on with the show. Cold weather, as mentioned by Michael Shure, is forcing President-elect Trump's inauguration ceremony to be moved indoors. Trump confirming the news in a post on his Truth Social platform. Temperatures are expected to reach below freezing in the nation's capital on Monday. Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance will now be sworn into office in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. The parent company of Cash App is being ordered to pay up to $175 million for not protecting users from fraud. Thursday, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ordered Block to pay consumers up to $120 million. The agency also fined the company $55 million, which will go to a victims relief fund. So if you used Cash App, perhaps you have some money coming to you, or maybe you don't use
And
Cash
not to
App. I don't know.
and not to mention, if you use the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, you may not have that anymore in the next administration. So it's these are people that are, very famously, Elizabeth Warren was a big part of the formation of this, and these are people who represent people, and they are a way to get consumers to have recourse against big companies, and you see it at work here, and its potential for disappearing is real.
The President-elect Trump, for folks wondering, will he use his Bible that he's selling to people, or what will it be? He will be using the Bible from his mother, as well as the Lincoln Bible for his swearing in on Monday. His late mother gave him this Bible in 1955 for his primary school graduation, signed by church officials and inscribed with Trump's name. The Lincoln Bible was first used at President Lincoln's swearing in 1861. It has been used 3 times since during former President Obama's 2 inauguration and Trump's first one as well. So that's swearing in on 2 Bibles. Does that mean he really believes in the Constitution? Does that mean he really means it? I don't know.
Well,
it's a double swearing in.
Right. And is it official? Is it like two negatives make a positive or something? Like once if you're sworn in on 2 Bibles, they cancel each other out and you're actually not the president?
Some of music's biggest stars are coming together to raise money for those affected by the Los Angeles wildfires. Billie Eilish, Lady Gaga, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, all booked to perform at Fire Aid benefit concert. Green
And
Day,
Sting. I'm interrupting Sting. Yeah. All right.
That's
Just wanted
okay.
to
I
say
know
that.
Green Day,
He was my
Jelly
favorite
Roll,
on.
Wind and Fire, Katy Perry, Sting, all in the lineup. The benefit concert takes place January 30th in 2 separate venues, the Intuit Dome and the Kia Forum. The tickets go on sale on Tuesday. iHeartRadio will be streaming the benefit concert live across nearly 900 radio stations. So hopefully they pull in a lot of money for the people that are affected by this fire.
Yeah, that would be
The
great.
horror reboot Wolfman is off to a nice start at the box office. The film making $1.4 million from Thursday previews yesterday. It's expected to pull between 17 and 21 million over the MLK holiday weekend. Meanwhile, the buddy comedy One of Them Days, starring Keke Palmer and SZA, made 1.3 million yesterday, and they think it'll bring in about 13 million over the holiday period through Monday. A note, we have the culture blaster Michael Snyder at 12:35, who will talk movies, and so we'll see if he's got these on his list and what he thinks of what's happening at the box office. This report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore, and I'm telling you, Rich and Nancy are the absolute nicest people, and it shows because they make the nicest wine. So good, including and I have them both right here. Look at this. Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio? And the Why Are You Yelling Red, which I maintain is some of the best red wine I've had. They have a great winery with actually beer on tap. So if you're a beer drinker that you're pulled in to go wine tasting, Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore is the right place for you. We've got some great deals as well. They have some great deals. Check in with Rich out at Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. You can call him at 925-699-4576 or rich@tenutavineyard.com. And if you say the phrase that pays, which is smash it with your iron rod, then you will receive at least 10% off at Tenuta Winery, if not more, because Rich has all kinds of deals on cases of wine. So start 2025 off, maybe celebrate or don't celebrate the inauguration with a little wine from Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show. Yep.
Kim, thanks.
It is. For sure.
Thanks
The
for
Mark
the news.
Thompson
It is,
Show.
and neither one of us. Yeah. And neither one of us are Mark Thompson, according to that wine label. Yeah. But in Mark's absence, we are carrying on, and with that, because at this time of day on Fridays, Mark and the gang always go to Florida.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
You know, it's one of the great pleasures of the show is doing this, because it's something like which I've never done before. But we have some good Florida stories today, and we're going to want and invite your participation. And we will start at Jacksonville Beach, where a Florida man who built what is called a spite house, which towers over his neighbors, is loving it, right? So here it is. This is the house you can see right there, I believe. Yeah, that's the house. And what's great about this story actually is that they're near Jacksonville Beach, and he's made a towering 10-foot wide house. It stands as a middle finger to the neighborhood, they are saying. So it's built on a sliver of land out of pure spite. The property has become the talk of the town, and its owner, Mike Kavanaugh, couldn't be more proud. But this isn't just any narrow home. It's a structure born from defiance. Developer John Atkins, the man behind the project, refused to sell the awkwardly sized lot to persistent neighbors. So rather than sell it off, he was determined to squeeze a house into the tiny space. Initially, they proposed a 15-foot wide home. City officials said no. Now they brought it down to 10. And the 19-foot tall house looms over the surrounding backyards and pools, casting literal and figurative shadows. I think the fact my home was featured on Zillow Gone Wild, and there used to be a for sale sign in the yard, both drew a lot of attention. So, I mean, you look at it, the interior, pretty nice. I mean, skinny, but nice. There seems to be plenty of space. You're near Jacksonville Beach, and if it would be pretty good. He said, if I were 40 with young kids, it wouldn't have worked. But for him, the controversial design works just fine. It's got a little yard in the back. The exterior has great curb appeal, and it's designed to make the most of its slim frame. So he's really like saying to everybody in the neighborhood, guess what? You guys are in it because you tried to buy the land, and now we're looking at a big, massive structure. And wow. I don't know that I'm sure they're most upset now about the fact that people are driving through the neighborhood just to take a look at it, right, Kim?
I wonder if does he actually live there, or did he just build it as a big, as you say, middle finger to the neighborhood? I can't hear you. Something happened to your sound.
Give it a second. Try now. Hold on.
I'm gonna pull out this then.
There it is. Tony's tinkering with things. Nope, you still can't hear you.
Crackle. Hold on.
Oh no, that's crazy though. Look how big that thing is. Wow, it's very tall. This is a plot of Bad Monkey, says Dehugval. I've never seen it. That's funny. I've never seen it. That's funny.
Can you can I be heard?
You can be heard.
Okay, good. All right. Well, so we've sort of resolved it by accident. I think, but first of all, that home looks super nice, and I wouldn't be upset. I mean, I guess what I can't really gather is why he wouldn't sell the land to someone, and
like the people that have homes on either side that might want a bigger backyard, because he is an angry fellow.
Yeah, he's an angry fellow. So he is, and he is giving his anger to his neighbors in Jacksonville Beach or near Jacksonville Beach, Florida. So it does look, I mean, when you see it there, it's bigger and longer than everything else there. And it's just kind of a weird, piece of architecture there. But if a guy's determined, the guy's determined.
It's totally weird. And he's surrounded on all sides by swimming pools.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So now we move to Marion County, Florida, Kim and Tony. And police said they arrested recently a Florida man after he was caught stealing nearly 300 gallons of gas worth more than $1,000. The Ocala Police Department has identified the man as 35-year-old Juan Carlos Abreu Reyes. Reports show Abreu Reyes is being charged with grand theft, resisting arrest without violence, operating an unregistered vehicle, unlawful conveyance of fuel, and organized dealing in stolen property. I mean, you don't hear a lot about unlawful conveyance of fuel charges.
No.
So he sits at the Marion County Jail, and you see him there with his inauguration photo. Looking sharp. So the backstory is that officers said they were informed of a fuel theft in progress. According to reports, an Ocala Police Department canine officer was the first to arrive, stated the man tried to get away in his car as well as on foot before he was caught by the officer and his canine. Police said they caught the man stealing 294 gallons of diesel fuel worth $1,084 using a modified minivan equipped for siphoning fuel.
Oh, he's been doing this for a while then, hasn't he? Yep.
Yeah, he knows his game. So he probably is aware of the unlawful conveyance of fuel risk. And the car was unregistered, contained multiple storage containers for fuel. You got to like his preparation. After identifying the man and conducting an investigation, officials stated Abreu Reyes was arrested. He was taken to jail after receiving hospital treatment for his dog bite because it was a canine officer who arrested him. So not a great day for Jose. He was,
I would say, look at all that stuff in the van. Yeah, he was prepared. He's been doing this for a while.
He was ready. So you've got to give the man some credit, but he was conveying, it seemed, fuel. And
what do you do? I mean, imagine riding around with that much flammable fuel in your minivan. One wrong move and that whole van's going up in flames.
Right, exactly. And that's why if you're going to convey fuel, you've got to do it legally because he clearly wasn't. The family van is amazing too. That was his. That he had that
toddlers in the back.
Exactly.
Fuel.
Oh, and right. My son, my daughter, 294 gallons of diesel. It's pretty great. Okay, so now we move from Marion County, Florida, to Polk County, Florida. Police said a Florida man recently was arrested for a DUI with his blood alcohol level. So I skipped one, but we'll go back to that. Blood alcohol levels more than 6 times the legal limit. Ooh. 6 times. The Haines City Police Department arrested Miguel Angel Rodriguez on January 7th in the Haines City area of Polk County. He sits in Polk County Jail. So here, the backstory is a Haines City police officer was patrolling on the 7th of January when a concerned person called 911 about an unresponsive driver. Well, at least he wasn't actually driving. The responding officer said when he arrived at the scene, he saw Rodriguez unresponsive behind the wheel with his foot on the brake, the car in gear, and the engine running. And concern for safety of the driver and others, the officer said he positioned his patrol car in front of Rodriguez's vehicle to prevent it from lunging forward into travel. They attempted to wake Rodriguez, but that was unsuccessful. The officer said he forced entry into the passenger's put the vehicle in park and remove the keys from the ignition. Once inside the vehicle, the officer reported observing Rodriguez briefly open his eyes, going in and out of consciousness, but unaware of the events unfolding. Officers reported Rodriguez does not have any prior DUI arrests, but he does have a history of miscellaneous traffic citations. Don't we all, though? Highest level seen is what they're saying. There was one count of DUI indicating a blood alcohol content of 0.523. Reports say
how do you even survive that? I mean, that's huge.
0.523. If you're above 0.08, you are legally impaired. 0.523. I mean, This is an all-time record. This
What's
incident
the
underscores
limit for alcohol poisoning? I think at like 0.3, you could have alcohol poisoning. This guy's at 0.5. That's crazy.
So Gorasek, who is the police chief in Haines City, that's Greg Gorek, not Gorasek, Gorek, stated that in his almost 30 years of law enforcement, more than 10 of those exclusively dedicated to traffic homicide and DUI investigations, Rodriguez's blood alcohol level was the highest level he remembers seeing where the driver was still alive. So
it's impressive.
Kudos to Rodriguez for living through that, but damn. That is a lot of
The
alcohol.
one thing that stands out to me in this story, reports show the car had 12 opened and consumed bottles of wine. So I guess if you drink 12 full bottles of wine, that's your blood alcohol level.
Right.
0.52, 0.5, whatever.
If there was a gallon of diesel in the back, you would have drunk.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's some serious drinking. And then we take more DUI through Florida, and we go to Ocala, Florida, where a man suspected of DUI is arrested after he tried to hand cops a debit card instead of his license. According to MCSO, deputies responded to a call at the Marion County Sheriff's Office, as you all know, as if I needed to clarify it any further. Responded to a call at a Circle K on Southeast Baseline Road. Upon arrival, they found William Asbury passed out in his vehicle. Really a pastime in Florida, passed out in your vehicle. Video shows the man standing behind the vehicle slumped face down into the driver's seat. When the deputies approached him asking to see his license, Asbury attempted to hand him a debit card. After conducting a DUI investigation, it has.
What's going on, bro? You got your driver's license on you? That's a debit card.
That's debit card, sir. Nope, it's not your driver's license.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
That's a pretty good mugshot. Look at that.
I mean, it's got my name on it. Yeah, that's pretty. Peter Noon said he should drive a Cybertruck. So he has a pretty good inauguration photo himself. I mean, he's looking pretty sharp. Spend some good time on grooming that Van Dyke, or is that what it is there? So some of the ratings for this one coming in: a 4, a 2.3. Forgot that we do that.
We rate that,
6.5. Tammy Stansel giving him a 6.5. Pretty good.
He gives me a Willie Nelson vibe a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, right? Mm-hmm. There's no question. I mean, these are. I mean, so Trevor gives it a -7. Silicon Valley blocks 3.2178. Yeah, I would have given a 3.2179, but I see where you're coming from. Gordon says cute hair. Yeah, he does have a do. There's no question. So I guess now, Kim, we first of all, Luis coming in $4.99. It continues to be Tony's birthday all day, whether we're in California or Florida. Happy birthday, Tony! You live in an arcade and go to 1,000 shows. Keep winning, my friend, and be well. Look at that. So
that's nice.
The love for Tony not ceasing. So the Friday Fabulous Florida winner, Spite House is at 24%, the gas thief at 31%, DUI debit card at 19%, and 6 times drunk is 24%. So I haven't voted yet, but I think that I love records. We were talking about Ovechkin earlier, breaking Gretzky's record. This guy was a cop for 30 years, had never seen anyone live through that much of alcohol consumption at that level. But still, the Spite House has people sort of interested, I think, because of the Spite House guy. I don't know the entire story, so for that reason, I can't vote for the Spite House. The gas thief, I want to give kudos to because of how well thought out it was. The DUI debit card, fine. To me, that could happen in any state. But 6 times drunk, that's going to have to get my vote, Kim.
So many, many moons ago, while I was in college, I worked in an emergency room, and there were always people that were inebriated coming in, and the blood alcohol test would be run, and everyone in the ER would throw a quarter in a cup, and you would write on the outside of the cup what you thought the blood alcohol was of this particular person based on their behavior in the emergency room.
Amazing.
And in all of my emergency room workings, never, ever have I seen a 0.5 something.
Yeah.
And this was a major trauma center I worked at. I've seen in the 3s, I've seen in the 4s, and usually at that point, they're not even coherent enough to be behaving badly. Like, this is a serious situation. The fact that this guy was he awake and alert with a 0.522, I have to give him my vote. Like, whoa. Yeah, that's as I say, impressive, but in a bad way.
Yeah, in a very bad way. Tony, what's your birthday vote today? Do you have a horse in the race?
You know, I usually try to pick these things that are like uniquely Florida. So it's between the gas thief or the 6-time drunk, and I'm with you. I got to go with the drunk. I mean, he lived. That's something. Yeah. He didn't die.
Right. I like the cop saying that I've never seen at 30 years of this, never seen one that's not dead with this high.
We've never seen anything like this. Yeah.
But I have great respect for the preparation, the thought process of the gas thief. But today he just cannot pull out a third place, and but the voting has been vigorous, and we appreciate that.
He did it. He got drunk in style with wine. You know, he did.
Well, that's true. He did. It was wine. It wasn't like this. Wasn't just light beer or some sort of Florida microbrew. This was.
God, how many light beers would that have taken?
Oh my God,
cases.
Shows you what a terrible drinker I am. The first thing I say is light beer, right? Right. A glass of water. We have more as another super sticker. Oh, so Vicky and Sausalito, very nice of you to say that. Michael, thank you so much for coming to play with us. Great job. Thank you. You guys all make it easy, especially Kim and Tony and all of you. So thank you. Luis, we had that West Thierry. I think I mentioned this earlier with a $3 super sticker earlier today. So thank you so much for all the support all week. This has been fun. And the Florida thing, kind of great too.
Let me just play the outro for it.
Oh yeah, we're not. Yeah,
we got to play the intro. We got to keep it consistent. Mark's going to call us. We don't.
But I was going to say, Tony, my favorite part, because I'm always listening to it in the green room when I'm coming on to do politics, is this.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now here.
There you go.
There you go. We have coming in shortly Ben Jacobs, who is just an exceptional political reporter, and I'm happy that he's able to join us for a little bit today from Washington. I did want to, we were talking about President Biden before we did the news and before we had our little Florida trip, but the president sat down last night with Lawrence O'Donnell, and these end of term kind of interviews are always telling that presidents usually are more revealing. They of course are themselves, and they probably will say the things you expect them to say. But last night there were some poignant questions that were asked, and some interesting. I thought Lawrence O'Donnell, particularly asking about the president's speech and the end of a long career, was fascinating. Let's take a listen.
That was really the final big public moment in a 50-year political career. Yeah, that's how long it was. You've served in government longer than any person who's ever served in this job. What did that feel like at the end of that speech? We were pushed out of the room as people were surrounding you, hugging you, and as that emotion was filling the room. But was there a sense of the release of a burden getting up from that desk?
No, but there was a sense that of serious concern. You've known me a long time. I really am concerned about how fragile democracy is. That sounds corny, but I mean, I really am concerned because you've heard me say it 100 times. I really think we're at an inflection point in history here. We're unrelated to any particular leader. Things are going to change drastically. and it occurs every 5 or 6 generations. And it usually is generated by technology, usually generated by, I mean, for example, if Gutenberg didn't invent the printing press, how that would Europe ever gotten united in any way to understand what each country is thinking? I mean, it sounds stupid, but it really matters. And what I realize is that, look, I got involved, I didn't think about it this way, but I got involved in public life because of the abuse of power. I mean, my dad would say, you know, the greatest sin of all is the abuse of power. And I was raised in a circumstance where, like I used to always talk about how the worst thing ever happened to me was I used to stutter when I was a kid. And you really get made fun of when you talk like that. And, but I realized that maybe it was the greatest gift I ever got, because there's so many people who are in circumstances where they have something that they're dealing with that's beyond their immediate control. And I watched how I was a runt when I was a kid. I was a small kid. I was a pretty good athlete all the time, but I was, and you know, I learned how to fight when I didn't want to fight. But when you get made fun of, you learn to step up. But what it did was, it made me realize that there's so damn many bullies around. And I now extrapolate that all the way to democracy. The reason for all the safeguards out there is, in a very trite way to say it, is keep the bullies from taking advantage of everybody else. They're basic guardrails. And I think that this concentration of enormous wealth and power in a circumstance where everything's changing, and the biggest thing is changing is how we communicate with one another. I mean, all kidding aside, did you ever think at the point where you weren't sure who the editors were? Who's out there saying, no, you can't print that? You can't say it's not true. I mean, it's like, and when the multi, and when people aren't participating in paying their fair share, I have no problem with people making millions of dollars. But for God's sake, pay your fair share. And taxes and participation. And so I don't know, I just think things are at a point where it's awful hard to, I've had 4 of your colleagues in the last 4 years tell me they're worried they're going to be real serious players like you, not you, but your caliber, worried about whether or not they're going to be held accountable for telling the truth. When the hell's that ever happened in America? I mean,
and that was President Joe Biden last night. And these interviews at the end of presidential terms are always interesting. They say things that they're more free to say, still guarded. And the theme of his exit remarks has been about oligarchy. It's about the haves and the have-nots, and he sort of equated it to bullies and those being bullied. Look, these are the times when presidents reflect and historians reflect on those presidencies. He is going to go out, in the comments section here, I see a lot of people that are upset that he didn't leave sooner or didn't say he was just going to be a one-term president. He said it. At some point, he did decide that he was going to be a one-term president, or the decision was made for him. And people think that, that I don't know that will be his legacy. It's too early to say whether that will be. Barbara Geisenhoff here saying Biden should have honored his pledge to be a one-term bridge president. Kamala's 100-day campaign was not a winning proposition, so the FOTUS moves back into the Oval Office next Monday. Yikes. I mean, that is the sentiment that a lot of people have. He also didn't run, and maybe he got to it too late. Regardless, we don't know what his legacy is going to be until it's written by historians. A little bit farther down the line, people can talk about it now and do the sort of predictive analysis, which is fine. I do it. Everybody does it. But I don't think any of us are right yet, and we won't know that for a little while. What I am right about is Kim, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say he warned again during that MSNBC interview about a fragile American democracy, which kind of goes with what he was saying in his goodbye speech the day before, warning about the oligarchy, rise of an American oligarchy. And so he's telling us that what we have, our system of government, what we're doing here is very fragile and we have to protect it. And it scares me that over the next 4 years, we might not be able to protect it. I don't know how we protect it with what's about to come our way.
Well, there are, you know, there are ways of protecting it. What's about to come our way is probably unprecedented in certain respects, but I never sound the alarm too loudly. The country survived presidencies that were, including the first presidency from Trump, that were people predicted that we wouldn't survive it. Let's see. I appreciate your concern and the concern of so many people, but I do think also that that there are pieces in place to fight that. There are a lot of people who are going to be pushing back against what these people want to do, and getting the public involved is going to be an important part of that too. But let's see. This is an optimistic crew we have here on the show. Teacher Lori's last day speech has just pissed me off and make me resentful that he wasn't screaming this for the last 4 years when it was escalating. WTF? Yeah, I mean, the messaging on the part of this White House will certainly be looked at as not having been effective enough. And, you know, that could be a product of having a president who is older. It could be about making a mistake, whatever it is. It's certainly part of it. Let's dispense with me for a moment and get to my friend Ben Jacobs, who is an exceptional reporter. Who, if you know Ben, you know him from his work with The Guardian, with recently with New York Magazine, where he's done exceptional work, and I'm sure some of you have read his stuff. A lot of you probably have. Ben, thanks for coming out to the Mark Thompson Show.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Well, there he is.
Yep.
All right, Ben Jacobs, how are you? So, Ben, what's your take? We'll start with the president because that's where we started. We'll start with you with the president, then we'll get into some of what's been happening that you've been covering, that you've been hearing and feeling in D.C. But what do you make of the president's kind of exit strategy, as it were, and how the themes that he's hitting as he goes out?
I don't think it's anything particularly surprising that, this is something presidents tend to do, to go out and try to make one last play to sell themselves for history, tout their legacy, that sort of learning about the oligarchy in a tech industrial complex, seemed to be an echo of Eisenhower's military industrial complex, and trying to sort of add one last pitch to history there and, try to give himself some historical weight. Biden's someone who's always cared about his legacy, who's always paid attention to this stuff, and this is one last effort to burnish things and try to make a play for the history books to sell himself as a successful president.
Right, but I see that, but I also, what I'm remembering through this are the warnings, not the look what we've done as much. To me, unusual is even when Clinton left office and Bush was coming in, or Obama left office and Trump was coming in, and just to put it in recent history, that these kind of ominous warnings that he's talking about oligarchy and divisions and all of that. That to me seems unusual, and not that I'm judging it. I don't remember that. Do you?
No, I think it's a little bit unusual, and it sort of comes to the circumstances that Biden, of course, unlike Obama and Bush, is a one-term president. He, failed to get reelected, and first with his own campaign, and then getting a successor reelected, and dealing with the fact he's being succeeded by Donald Trump, that his campaign was based on the fact that Donald Trump was his campaign in 2020, was based on the fact that Trump was an aberration. Trump, in the political strife Trump represented, didn't represent America. And it turns out he was wrong. And Americans elected Donald Trump for the second time. And, trying to deal with that fact, because the basic premise of his presidency, that Donald Trump was an aberration, Americans wanted to return to pre-Trump times, turned out to be unsuccessful. Do
you think, that's fascinating stuff, because that's true. I mean, that that Biden was wrong. Biden beat him, but Biden ended up being wrong. But is there a chance that Biden is right in that when you talk about the aberration, that this is an anomalous time or person, that do you feel that maybe he was right about the fact that we can't know that until we're post-Trump, until we see where the Republican Party goes, if this was a cult of personality and not necessarily a change in the electorate so much?
I mean, I'm certainly, that's we'll find out. There's a lot to see right now, and certainly the effects Trump has on the electorate seem to be only seen when he's on the ballot. There are a lot of voters who turn out exclusively for Donald Trump, and not for other candidates who are running on the ticket with him, as we've seen in elections. But the basic fact that Donald Trump got elected twice seems to rule things out. That it's, if something happens once, it can be dismissed, but this is now clearly part of the pattern. And even to the extent that the Republican Party, there will be a post-Trump Republican Party, it's one fundamentally formed by him, molded in his image, that every 2 years the new members of the House tend to be more Trumpy than the ones they've replaced, and more aligned with Donald Trump's values. That obviously, if you have skepticism about Donald Trump, you're not particularly inclined to run for office. If you're open about it, you're not going to be successful running for office. That it's increasingly the sense that Trump is, setting himself up to be right now, transformational figure like FDR or Reagan, and the effects he's had on American politics.
If you use that old maxim that the moment the president takes the oath of office in his second term, he's a lame duck, and when that happens, it sort of accelerates to the point when people within the president's own party start carving out ways away from him, right? We've never seen that happen successfully with Trump. Do you see that happening, as was typical, where people will be a little bolder to stand up to MAGA, to Trumpism? I mean, there's nothing that indicates to me that that would happen, but except that history has shown that it does.
No, that any efforts to build a political lane outside of Trump and to potentially succeed him certainly won't happen initially when he takes office, and will all be within the Trumpian lens. That there is, the non-MAGA Republicans don't exist anymore. That a lot of these folks, that the parties have realigned, and that there really isn't room for this. That there will be sort of variations in what they emphasize, but this is, the Republican Party in the future will be sort of, it's the Baskin-Robbins version of Trumpism, the 31 flavors, and you can choose which one and which emphasis you like, be it on immigration, on foreign policy, on industrial policy, on Greenland, but that, it's all going to be different emphases. And, even the candidates who are most Trump skeptical, if you think about Nikki Haley's campaign for president last year, is still going to be within the Trumpian framework.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So tell me, you are on Capitol Hill a lot. You're speaking to some of those Republicans. The moderate Republicans, or the non-MAGA Republicans that you say don't exist, and the notion of where their party is gone. What feeling do you get from some of them in general, and not specifics, because I'm sure that's all background and off the record stuff, but people who have expressed skepticism about where their party is headed? What are they saying now?
I think this is Trump's term, and it's time to make see what happens. That this is someone who is, has won re-election, and it's a question of what policies he pursues. And, it's going to be, there's sort of a question of seeing what quite is going to happen. That if you think back to 2017, Trump initially didn't really pursue the quote unquote MAGA agenda. It was sort of traditional sort of Paul Ryan Republicanism. And we're not going to see that this time. And it's a question of how that is being reshaped. And it's also worth sort of taking the step back, that MAGA and moderate, this is not necessarily on an ideological scale. That some of the most Trump skeptical members of the Republican conference are sort of Tea Party types, if you think back to Chip Roy or Thomas Massie. Whereas, you think about moderates from the Northeast are much more pro-Trump, representing, places like Long Island and New Jersey. So that this is not necessarily an ideological divide, but I think there's sort of a real question whether Trump benefits the second time around from knowing what he's doing, having a well thought out agenda, having teams in place, and having people who are loyal to him pursuing a Trump agenda, not a traditional Republican agenda.
Ben, talk to me, like if you can find something to say to, a lot of members of the audience at Mark Thompson show are, of course, not happy with the results of the election. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And there's sort of a lack of optimism about what can happen. You're there every day. What can happen? Why is there room for optimism? Why is there, or what nugget would you point to say, Democrats can make trouble here? Where can we look for that?
Look, I think right now you're dealing with a very perilous House majority for Republicans. It's down to 2 seats, and within the 219 Republicans right now, they're completely fractious. But I think the broader scheme is that political parties and politics moves in cycles. That Republicans were feeling hopeless around this time in 2009 after Barack Obama took office with these huge Democratic majorities, and a year and a half later you had big Republican wave in 2010. That American politics tends to be cyclical, and there's no such thing as permanent majorities or permanent minorities. So that we'll see what happens moving forward. But American politics is by no means a static creature, as we've seen with the major realignments that have happened in Trump years. That Orange County, California, is now Democratic, and that had been the heart of Barry Goldwater Republicanism. And Youngstown, Ohio, is certainly Trumpian. That had been the basis of sort of New Deal, industrial, trade union, Democratic Party values for better part of a century. So that all these things change and nothing is ever constant in American politics.
An excellent answer. Tell me about stuff that's happening right now. These confirmation hearings. It looks as if, I think when Joni Ernst, and we've talked about it on the show this week, when Joni Ernst gave her support to Pete Hegseth, it gave a lot of cover to others. And it looks like Hegseth, barring anything we don't know just yet, is going to be confirmed. It looks like everyone who's come up so far is going to be confirmed. Should we be watching the Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel hearings specifically? Do you see any room for Republicans in that 53-47 Senate to have enough push against a nominee?
Certainly. And I think, remember, this is about, you need 4 Republicans. If you have 3 Republicans, it's a tie, and JD Vance can break the tie. This is a slightly different dynamic than you saw in the Trump era, when the Senate Republican majority was slim and it came down to Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and Joe Manchin potentially going in the other direction. Being in the room for the Hegseth hearing, Hegseth was sort of there to, he's certainly well prepared. He's media trained and, trying to minimize the damage. And he's a Republican. He's a Fox News host, that there's sort of a core loyalty there, where I think the differences are going to come. We're going to see both with Tulsi Gabbard and with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because they're not Republicans, that there's not the rally around the flag situation. They're still coming, recent converts, and, not being picked as sort of nods towards bipartisanship, but being picked as sort of these folks who have these MAGA credentials. And I think there are real concerns with both of them. That, there's certainly concerns about Tulsi Gabbard's foreign policy views from sort of traditional establishment foreign policy Republicans, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that, he is a Republican nominee to be Secretary of Health and Human Services for the president who, got Roe v. Wade overturned, and he's pro-choice. And there's real concern from sort of pro-life social conservatives about this. And I think that's really where the tensions are. That, there are certainly other concerns Democrats have with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., certainly all his views on vaccines, but it's, which will factor into Republican concerns too. But what changes this is that he is a recent convert, that he has MAGA credentials, as does Tulsi Gabbard, but not Republican credentials.
And one, just a little more on Kash Patel. Where do you see that going? Do you see, a lot of people think that, okay, we can suffer Pam Bondi. We can suffer a lot of the people who, who watch this show, and a lot of Democrats. We can suffer some of the predictable Republicans that are going to come before this. But this Kash Patel, he has an enemies list. He wrote a book about it. He is someone who we really don't want him around the barn. How do we look at that? And is there a way that he doesn't? I mean, are there enough Republicans, do you think, who've been skeptical of his nomination?
I think there need to be 4 Republicans, and part of it is that there has been less focus on Patel's nomination in recent weeks and months, just with everything going on. Some of it, if something happens during the hearings, but as of now, you need 4 Republicans to break against party lines for someone who has been a loyal Republican foot soldier on this stuff for a while. And that's probably not likely to happen. There's certainly the possibility, that unlike Hedgeseth, Kash Patel is certainly a less polished figure. There's questions about what, anything else that could come out in the process of vetting. But this is a top priority for Trump. This is someone who's loyal to Trump, and that it would require a lot of political capital for something like this.
53-47, the Democrats still have Chuck Schumer leading their caucus in the Senate. Generally speaking, I mean, people are seeing that, again, this is a part of the old guard of Democratic politics. Are there now people talking about new leadership in the Senate for the Democrats, whispering about who might be that person to fight harder in a way from the minority than Chuck Schumer might be able
Certainly
to?
Not at this point. And I don't know if there's sort of much other options about fighting harder in terms of, there's obviously all the legislative tactics you can do that, it's a question whether fighting harder means being more strident on MSNBC, which there's certainly people who could do that. But I don't know how effective that would be.
Or on the Mark Thompson show. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So I see that. And I just wonder, because I see, the new guard of John Thune, who's not 25 years old, but and Mike Johnson, who is also not 25, but there's been some more turnover over there. And you look at the Democratic bench, even though Hakeem Jeffries is there, but you still see some of the older familiar faces leading the Democrats, and wondering if that is part of a plan that you've heard about. But yeah, that wouldn't happen, I would guess, until later, and no one would want the job unless they knew that they could make some hay at 53-47. It's kind of hard.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's certainly difficult. And Thune had been in the Senate for 20 years and been in leadership, and Mike Johnson's elevation happened under circumstances which can charitably be described as unusual.
Right. And how secure is he? Like, is he somebody who should, when sometimes a player gets traded and they say rent, don't buy, is he somebody who should be renting and not buying?
I mean, his gavel is because of the support of Donald Trump. It's not because of anything at his point, and that once there's any wavering, that's gone. That Johnson's in a tenuous situation with a relatively impossible job to perform, and it's just a question of if Trump, for some reason, the White House decides they could do better than him, he's gone. That Donald Trump was the one who got everyone over the line. It was Donald Trump's last minute lobbying that got Johnson elected a couple weeks ago, and that there's enough skeptics of any speaker from sort of the Freedom Caucus, hard right of House Republicans, that it's, with a majority of 30, it's not an easy job, let alone a majority of 2.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I noticed also something that I hadn't heard a speaker say before. We'll let you go in a second. But when Mike Turner, as the chair of the Intelligence Committee, was let go or demoted by Mike Johnson, Johnson was quick to point out that this was not from Trump. This was from the House, which I've never heard a speaker say that before. The speaker usually speaks from a place of power.
Certainly, yeah, and Judge Johnson's not coming from a place of power. And Turner said that Johnson had told him it come from Mar-a-Lago, and that sort of speaks to the difficulty of this stuff, because this is something he did after dragging out the process. sort of springing on when it was not expected. And now you have Mike Turner discontented, and with a perilously thin majority, that any one unhappy person, any malcontent, can make your job impossible.
Yeah. And I think that's why Turner knows that it was not Johnson doing this. It was Johnson, being the hatchet guy. It's sort of like the George Steinbrenner's managers, right? Whatever they did was because George wanted it done. And it feels like that.
Well, yeah, though I feel like Mike Johnson doesn't quite have Billy Martin's personality.
No, he doesn't. More of a Bob Lemon type, maybe. So, Ben, before I let you go, huge Ravens fan, Ravens season ticket. We've exceeded our sports talk on this show, but where are you going to be watching the game, and what's your prediction?
Just on my couch, and it'll be a good game, and we'll see what the weather looks like in Buffalo. It's the likely MVP in Lamar Jackson and another good quarterback in Josh Allen. So we'll see what happens.
So diplomatic, man. So diplomatic. Ben Jacobs, we can read what he does so well in New York Magazine and other places. Look for him, follow him on X and anywhere else, Blue Sky, and thanks for taking time to be on the Mark Thompson show and sharing what's happening in DC ahead of the inauguration. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Well, there you have it. Just a little. It's always nice to get it from someone who's in the halls, because having been in the halls, Kim, it is a little different, and you do hear things and see it through a lens that is very different than from where you see it afar. Sometimes it blurs you because you're so close to it, but sometimes it gives you perspective that makes it not seem so alarming. It's interesting to talk to people like that.
Yeah, he's good. I wonder if he'll be at the TikTok inauguration party.
I don't know if Ben will be. I should have asked you to chime in, and you should have chimed in. I don't know if you will. And is the TikTok inauguration party even? Has it been banned?
I don't know. They're spending $50,000 on an inauguration party honoring the influencers who helped Trump spread the campaign message. If this is not TikTok saying, "Hey, save me,
keep us open, keep us open." Yeah,
I don't know what is. Oh my gosh, the CEO of TikTok is supposed to attend. I think this is like a last ditch effort. This big TikTok party, and it's kind of just ingratiating. I don't know. It just seems so desperate.
It does. I mean, all of it does, though. I mean, it's Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and who's the other one I'm forgetting right now? Of Jeff Bezos sitting at the inauguration seems desperate. Patrick
Sundar Pichai, he's going to be there from Google. Yeah.
Patrick Soon-Chung pulling the LA Times endorsement. Jeff Bezos doing the same thing. I mean, this is all desperate. It's a level of kowtowing that is frightening, really, and it's happening all over there. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's throwing his own inauguration party, so Meta is in on all of it because they're afraid of what the administration can do, and there's a blatancy to it. I mean, look here. I'm supposed to know who these TikTokers are, I think, but there's someone in a MAGA hat, and
she must be a MAGA influencer who's being celebrated. Listen to this, Michael Shure. In a sign of Trump's close ties to TikTok, CEO Xu Zichu will be seated at the dais of Trump's inauguration. And here's the message they have for everyone. TikTok is not a partisan platform, but what they are is a public square for free speech committed to the free and fair exchange of ideas in their platform. This is according to the organizer of the event and the Republican National Committee Youth Advisory Council co-chair. So they're saying free speech. We're free speech, right? That's what Trump is saying. He's not free speech. He's for speech he agrees with, but whatever. I digress. And the CEO of TikTok is going to be front and center, along with Zuckerberg, along with Bezos, along with, Dr. Evil, Elon Musk. And so they're all going to be there. This is a new world we have going on.
Yeah, none of us are quite used to it, and I don't think the other side is used to it either. I don't think that many. I don't think a lot of elected politicians who are Republicans quite know what to do about this, and I don't. I mean, and I know two Republicans who I've spoken to are not happy with Musk's influence in Washington. Two elected Republicans who I spoke to after, actually it might have been before the election, just before the election, when he was a big part of the influence in the Trump campaign, and you're seeing it play out here, and you're going to see it play out in ways we had never seen before, in quieter ways. And then again, we're hearing Donald Trump talk about William McKinley as a president that he admires, right? And William McKinley was this, he was known as very, very kind to industrialists and the moneyed class, and paved the way for the Gilded Age. And again, this is it's not by accident, and certainly it's not because Trump went into the biography room at the White House and sat up reading a biography of William McKinley. It's someone who said to him, William McKinley did this. Oh, is that right? Yeah, I like William McKinley now. So it's a fascinating place where we find ourselves.
An aside, they're going to have a black tie crypto ball. So you know.
Right. Okay.
I'm
glad I have you.
Where the cryptos are. I just what is happening?
I'm glad I have you, because none of my invitations made it to me. So having you tell me about it is even better. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, inaugural balls are inaugural balls. They happen all the time. There are parties around them, Democrat, Republican, whoever it is. You don't see the blatant sort of branding of them the way you do now. It'll be a big donor. It'll be, I recall that there was like the Illinois ball for the Obamas and the Arkansas ball for the Clintons and a lot of their friends. It's a way of getting people you grew up with to come to the inauguration and have a good time. It's a party, Sure. It's a celebration. But these kind of parties that are so targeted and so blatantly sucking up to the incoming president are highly unusual in their publicity too. It's and they're very, very transparent.
Can I throw out this giant hypocrisy that is just glaring like a blinking sign in the night?
Yeah.
The people that voted for Trump are so worried about the price of eggs and the price of gas. And Trump promises he's going to bring down prices, right? He is the president for the everyman. He is the president for the people that are struggling. He's going to fix it. Meanwhile, in DC, he's got TikTok paying 50 grand for a party. He's got the rise of the American oligarchy and the billionaires sitting front and center. And now, Michael Shure, we have a poll that shows that many American adults are now skeptical about the president's ability to bring down prices. About 2 in 10 Americans are extremely or very confident that Trump will be able to make progress on lowering the cost of groceries, housing, or healthcare this year. The survey done by the Associated Press, Nork Center for Public Affairs Research. 2 in 10 moderately confident. Faith in Trump's ability to create jobs was a little bit higher. 3 in 10 were confident he would be able to make progress on that. But people are saying now, I don't think he's going to be able to bring down prices in the first year. This is going to be hard. And even Trump has said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring down prices as easily as I said. Yeah.
Yeah. You said Trump promises that he's going to bring down prices. No. Trump promised
the election.
He promised. Yeah. And now he's walking that back. And the other thing about these people, I would walk these lines of people outside the Trump rallies, and I'd ask them, and I'd say, what is it that bothers you? Oh, the price of eggs, price of a loaf of bread. Have you gone to the market recently? And I was just there to answer. Meanwhile, I'm interviewing them in front of a row of about 40 tents of people selling everything from Donald Trump thongs to Donald Trump glasses to Donald Trump mugs and beer bongs and all of that, and they're buying all this stuff, and they're spending hundreds of dollars in these tents, and they're complaining to me that their eggs are now 94 cents higher than they were, or maybe $3, or maybe coming out of the pandemic it got worse.
Wow.
So the hypocrisy that you mentioned, it was really palpable on the trail. It's always palpable in politics. And it was what, I bring up Jimmy Carter a lot, not just because he passed recently and we're all reminded of the values he held, but he was one thing that he was not, which so many in politics are hypocritical. He absolutely walked every walk and stood behind everything he said, sometimes to his own detriment politically, but he was not hypocritical. And he might have been the last non-hypocrite to be in office. But when you see the voters and you see the people that were supporting Trump out on the trail, and you see their hypocrisy talking about eggs while they're wearing, $75 worth of Donald Trump gear. And some of them not even bothering to go into the rally. They're just there to hang out with people. It's an amazing thing, actually.
You mentioned Jimmy Carter and his legacy and who he was. And it makes me think about the legacy of President Biden. And I think it was Ben Jacobs a few minutes ago who was talking about Biden's legacy as well. And one of the things I was reading last night is this Politico piece about President Biden and what he did for specifically Black women and how he'll be remembered in that regard. When he picked, of course, Kamala Harris, she was the first Black woman and the first Asian American nominee for vice president. But he also nominated the first Black female Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. And he appointed 39 other Black women to the federal judiciary, which is more than any previous president of the United States. Of his 235 appointments to the court, an estimated 60% were people of color. He placed Black women in visible positions of power. Karine Jean-Pierre as press secretary, Linda Thomas Greenfield as the U.S. ambassador to the UN. And so he will be remembered, I think, of being a friend to Black women and helping them rise. And I think that's something.
Yeah, he said when he was on the campaign trail that he promised that his Supreme Court justice would be a Black woman. And, somebody in the comments earlier was talking about Merrick Garland and how Merrick Garland was someone that Ron Klain put upon Joe Biden, even though Biden didn't really know Merrick Garland. It wasn't really quite that. It was that there was a bit of a puzzle as to get Ketanji Brown Jackson, who was going to be nominated to the Supreme Court, onto the D.C. Court of Appeals was the most important thing. To create a vacancy, they elevated Merrick Garland to Attorney General. He named Ketanji Brown Jackson to the D.C. Circuit. And that's what made it viable for her to be named to the Supreme Court. So there was some sort of personnel juggling that had to happen. And my sources had told me that Doug Jones was definitely in line for that job were it not to have been Merrick Garland. So his desire to elevate African-American women who really elevated him to the White House was super important to Joe Biden. And that's how it worked out. And yeah, I think that'll be part of his legacy. We rush to create a legacy.
Yeah.
For presidents. It does take quite a while. We don't really know what his will be. There will be Democrats who are upset with him, as we know, for staying too long and not having one term. There will be others who think that he held our hand and took us out of one abyss. Unfortunately, by not staying or by not leaving earlier, we've been led into another, is what a lot of other people will say. So it's very interesting to see how that is going to play out. But it also doesn't really matter right now. What you're saying is true. Those are facts, and those facts will be a part of creating that narrative, which is super important.
One of the things that it looks like is going to be the first thing Trump does, one of his first official trips here to California, where he has been invited to come check out the wildfires. And it'll be interesting to see what he does here. Will he tour the wildfires with Governor Gavin Newsom and folks from the Los Angeles City Council? And will he have bad things to say about our politicians, about the way we do things? Is he coming here to tear us down, or is he coming here to support us?
We'll see. If he brings money and doesn't bring blame, I think that's the kind of support that people want. Even his presence initially as president, and not blame would be an important thing. You see him. I'm guessing that's at the Paradise Fire when he was president.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Mhm.
He and Governor Newsom, have a very public conflict that has gone on for quite a while. I don't see him. I see him trying to be presidential. Is what my guess is. He likes that role. He likes presidenting, and he likes being counted on and asked for, and he likes holding purse strings, and that kind of thing is something that he's thrived on both in private and public life. So this is the kind of thing where I think he'll do what he ought to do. But I'm wrong a lot about Donald Trump. I should preface that.
One of the things that conservatives have been saying in the aftermath, which I say aftermath, the fires aren't even out yet, but because of these fires, they're saying, listen, Los Angeles can't handle these fires. They're not prepared. How in the world are they going to be able to handle an international event like the Olympics? And so there's all these MAGA people now saying Los Angeles doesn't deserve to have the Olympics. It should be held somewhere else. Give it to a red state, blah, blah, blah. And what's interesting is that I'll keep saying president-elect until it's actually time to say something else. But Trump says no. He says Los Angeles should have these games. He said these are America's Olympics. These are more important than ever to Los Angeles, and that Trump is going to be supportive in every way possible to make these the greatest games. So Trump is not dissing LA when it comes to the Olympics, and maybe that will make the rest of MAGA land stop harping on the Olympics and whether they should be held in Los Angeles or not. I don't know how Los Angeles is going to do this, but yeah.
Well, what's going to happen is first of all, it's not up to MAGA to decide where the Olympics are going to be held. It's not as if LA can hold them, they're going to move to Cincinnati, a nice, red city. That's not going to happen because it's the Olympic Committee that awards the Olympics to begin with, which is an international cooperative that does that. So it's not up to MAGA. What also isn't up to MAGA is whether or not LA wants to put them on in the first place. And I would imagine that they're now going to market it as the comeback of LA, the resurgence of Los Angeles after all the devastation. But the money that's going to be spent on the Olympics is going to really upset people in Los Angeles if it's not also spent on recovery from this fire. And I think the MAGA people are going to be most upset because my guess is the federal government is going to have a lot to do with putting on the Olympics, and a lot, and the people in Los Angeles are going to be spending a lot less on the Olympics and a lot more on getting back on their feet, because it's going to be unseemly to a lot of people to see money spent on the Olympics when people, don't have a roof over their head.
Yeah. I know Michael Snyder, the culture blaster, is just popping in, but before we get to him, I don't know if you heard about the goings on in Oakland, California. We had a mayor recalled, Mayor Sheng Tao, and yesterday the San Francisco Chronicle reported that she is going to be facing criminal charges. The indictment has allegedly come down. We haven't seen it yet, but her home was raided by the FBI, and she apparently has now been indicted by a federal grand jury, and more information about this is expected to be announced today. So we'll find out a little bit more about what happened. Oh, indicted on federal bribery charges is the latest. Yeah.
Well, her lawyers have very little time to get that pardon request in. So it's not looking good for the mayor. I mean, I don't know enough about that story, Kim, I confess. I'll have to look into that. Not good when you get federal bribery charges. No. I've rarely seen them not be taken seriously or not be a source of indictment. As a matter of fact, Bob Menendez, the Democratic former senator from New Jersey, beat federal bribery charges, and then they just found more, and they went after him again, and then they finally indicted him. So I convicted him. So I think that
if you accept one bribe, you've accepted many. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, we will move on from politics. We thank Ben Jacobs. and we get set now to for a look. If there's anything we need now, it's a little bit of a distraction, and so Michael Snyder is good for that and telling us how to distract ourselves. He comes and goes on a rainbow.
Hey, Michael. Hey, Kim. Hey, Tony. And hello from Southern California, where the heat is on, but not in my neighborhood, which is a good thing.
Are you well? Are you safe? And everyone you love safe?
Yeah, it's not been an issue. I do know 3 couples that lost their homes in Altadena, and I'm sure so many other people have been tragically impacted by the fire, and my heart goes out to them. There are GoFundMes. There are a number of concerts. Kim mentioned some high-profile musical artists doing some benefit concerts. There are smaller club events and club dates. There are World Central Kitchen food depositories and little eateries that are springing up all over the place. And there are places where you can donate food, clothing, toys, etc. You need only go online and take a peek to help people who are very much in need and facing a long haul to get back to where they should be. You know, Michael, it's the last weekend of American democracy. I don't know about you, but I'm going to party like it's 1776.
Yeah, well, go ahead and do it. I don't, bring the tea.
Yeah, I should do something. And speaking of the apocalypse, I think it's here. Yesterday, I spotted 3 Tesla Cybertrucks on the road during a 15-minute drive to Burbank. 3! Oh, my God. What is going on? I can't believe this.
No, it's amazing. My favorite Tesla Cybertruck story was that they found that that raccoons were mistaking these Teslas as dumpsters, and they keep going inside, small raccoons, to try and find garbage because they think that they're dumpsters. I read this article about a week or so ago, which I thought was hysterical.
You know what? They look to be like, I don't know, like an 8th grader in 1962 decided to design the car of the future, and that's what he came up with,
Yeah, totally. That's great.
Anyway,
all right, let's go to making us numb, Michael Snyder, and have us turn away from fires and political conflagration and all of that.
I think that's a good idea. And what's better to distract you than a giant slavering wolf man attacking you? That'll get your mind off of these, political issues. Bang, bang.
Absolutely. Get a lot of money.
Yeah, okay. People are desperate for entertainment. Universal, by the way, I go into a movie like this with an open heart and an open mind because it's kind of my jam. Universal Pictures has had like a seeming monopoly on monsters, being the home studio for the most iconic versions of Dracula, Frankenstein and his monster, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and adjacent characters like, Count Dracula's lackey Renfield. And as such, the studio has, since the 1930s, put out updates and reboots and reimaginings of the monsters from decade to decade. So this weekend sees the latest Universal iteration of the Wolfman, who in past incarnations, including a 2010 version with Benicio del Toro that I really liked, is a man bitten by a ravenous werewolf and cursed to turn into one under the full moon. So the LA area screening of Wolfman 2025, and that's not its actual title, was pitted against the only LA screening of the Issa Rae produced comedy One of Them Days. I know Kim mentioned both movies in an earlier news report today, and I chose The Wolf over the Kiki Palmer Sousa female buddy romp. But I mean, the night I saw it this past Monday was the night of the full moon, known as the Wolf Moon. I mean, I almost had to choose Wolfman. But from all the positive reports I've heard about One of Them Days, I may have made a bad choice. That said, Wolfman was directed by Lee Whannell, who helmed the very effective and clever update of The Invisible Man for Universal, which I thought that was really wonderful. And this guy also created the Saw horror film franchise with fellow filmmaker James Wan, and worked on the Insidious movies with Wan. So he's got a pretty decent track record. So as a fan of monster movies and horror films, I went to Wolfman, and it wasn't bad. And we have a running joke lately on the Thompson show, not terrible. Michael Snyder, the Mark Thompson show, like on a poster somewhere. So this may be one of those movies. It has some interesting and appropriately gross moments. It boasts two good young actors as the male and female leads. Christopher Abbott is the guy. He was in Poor Things. He was great opposite another rising star, Margaret Qualley, in a two-hander called Sanctuary. He was in the Feeble Craven the Hunter movie, and he was also one of the boyfriends in HBO's Girls, the Lena Dunham sitcom. And he's playing opposite the great, I say she's great, I've loved everything she's done, Julia Garner of Netflix's Inventing Anna, from Ozark, The Americans, The Assistant, and soon she's going to be the Silver Surfer in Marvel's Fantastic Four First Steps. So we're talking about high-powered performers doing a horror movie, which introduced a few twists to the classic story of, is it called lycanthropy? I think that's what it's called. Anyway, it is far from a classic or a groundbreaker. But on the other hand, the script by Whannell and perhaps a few too many other screenwriters does try to delve into the familial issues and relationship psychodrama that lurk in the heart of Blake, Abbott's character, who is a San Francisco freelance writer and the husband of a successful journalist named Charlotte, played by Garner, and the father of a cute little daughter. Oh my God, do you want to endanger the cute little daughter? Of course you do. Anyway, there were interesting decisions on the tech side. For instance, the Wolfman design is more like slimy mutant man-wolf than a furry-faced, magically transformed wolf man. And there's much less CGI than one might expect. And the intro is rather chilling, as is the finale, although I could see one aspect of it coming down Universal City Walk, if you get what I'm saying here. But ultimately, it's more conventional and workmanlike and less memorable and original than Whannell's bracing Invisible Man. But if he's going to give another Universal monster a go, I would be curious to see what he does with the creature from the Black Lagoon. Wolfman's in theaters. If it's your cup of tea, it's not bad. It's just not, going to change the world and stick in your nightmares. Shall we move on? Let's see here.
Indeed. Let's move on.
Okay. There is a little too much talent and Sylvester Stallone attached to the action movie Alarum for this to be so bland and forgettable. There are guns blazing and numerous explosions for 95 minutes, but for all of the international espionage and assassins and black ops, this still comes off as chintzy in some places. Like, for instance, it's supposed to be an Eastern European town, and there are like English language signs here and there. I kind of think Ohio was standing in for Gdansk, Poland, and the surrounding Polish countryside. And speaking of Polish, this was directed by a guy named Michael Polish, who has a number of acting credits and directed Big Sur, which is a low-budget movie I liked about beat author Jack Kerouac of On the Road fame. So our leads are Scott Eastwood, Clint's boy, as an ex-American secret agent named Joe Travers, who encounters and eventually marries Laura, a nubile and coolly efficient assassin played by Willa Fitzgerald. So good. She was amazing in last year's Strange Darling, highly recommended, among my top 10 films of 2024. Here she's given very little to work with. So this couple fall in love, go off the grid, and don't want anything to do with the espionage business anymore. But Joe's old bosses think he might have gone over to a rogue agency called Alarum, so he has to be tracked down and eliminated, of course. That job seems to go to a killer mercenary type played by Mike Colter, who you may know from Marvel's Luke Cage series and the current supernatural thing on Netflix, Evil. He's always wonderful. But here he's not given much to do but, be a bastard. We don't know what his agenda is, but he's coming after the couple as well. And meanwhile, Chester, love the name, played by Stallone, is Joe's former partner, who is also called in to eliminate Joe and Laura. So everybody is shooting at everybody else for 95 minutes. It just doesn't have much to it. Alarm disappointed me because, you know, like horror movies, I have a passion for espionage films. In both cases, I was like, but I mean, Wolfman at least is decent. This was pretty much a waste of time. It's in select theaters and available for streaming on demand if you want to check it out. And come on, Willa Fitzgerald, you're so good. We need you to be in something as good as Strange Darling next, and we'll see what her agents arrange for her.
You know what, Michael Snyder, just let me say, it might not be very good, but that Scott Eastwood is a pretty good-looking guy.
Well, yes, he's hunky. He's Clint's boy. And I know that there's a certain aspect of casting that keeps that in mind. You know, they're going to put somebody in there with a nice square jaw and what have you. But honestly, can't you just, you know, you should probably just watch some other hunk. I'm telling you, this was a disappointment to me.
Oh, okay.
And not to,
here's a movie that seemed. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You said
politically now that you know that Sylvester Stallone is one of Donald Trump's ambassadors to Hollywood, just to, you know, kind of making our little worlds meld a little bit more.
Another reason to not watch the movie. Anyway, that said, I mean, Clint's politics didn't affect my appreciation of Juror Number 2, which I thought was quite good. But, you know, give Eastwood the younger a better role, a better movie. And again, I like Michael Polish's Big Sur. Don't get me wrong. I really did. All right, this is a movie that seems that it was designed for you, Kim, but another disappointment. Wish You Were Here is a film adaptation of a best-selling novel of love and loss by Renee Carlino. It's also the directorial debut of the respected actress Julia Stiles, and she co-wrote the script with Carlino. It stars the young actress Isabel Furman, who got her start in the really strange horror movie Orphan, and most recently, as kind of a grown young woman, was quite good in The Novice. And here she plays Charlotte, a waitress in modern-day New York who has a chance encounter with a street artist, a good-looking kind of glib guy played by Mina Massoud, and falls for him during a one-night stand. But the artist has a secret that will turn their potential love affair into a star-crossed heartbreaker. Break out the Kleenexes. Anyway, to invoke a few previous movies that had similar plots or circumstances would be to kind of spoil Wish You Were Here for any would-be viewers. So I will only note that it reminded me a bit of The Fault in Our Stars, which I did think was corny, but struck me as a better movie. By the way, Jennifer Grey and Kelsey Grammer are on board as Charlotte's somewhat patient parents, and it's got its heart in the right place. It just didn't have enough to it. It didn't kind of pop the way it should, but I do believe Stiles has some skill as a director, and I'm curious to see what she does next. It's not terrible. Again, not terrible. The Michael Snyder reviews on Mark Thompson show. It is in select theaters. Wish You Were Here seems more like something you may kind of want to tune into when it's available on streaming, but again, none of these three movies is all that good. And you may be saying to yourself, why Michael? You know, why even? Don't you have anything for us? Isn't there any quality out there? Yeah, there is, and we have to go out of the country to find it this weekend. First off, I want to talk about one of my favorite films of 2024, now available in select theaters. It's called I'm Still Here. It is the latest from the award-winning director Walter Salles, who did City of God, The Motorcycle Diaries, Central Station, and get this, another Kerouac callback, the movie of On the Road that was done a number of years ago, quite good. And this is up to his usual high standards. It's called I'm Still Here, and it deals with something that is all too common in autocracies. So get ready, everybody. The Disappeared. Yeah, so it's based on a memoir. I'm Still Here is the title of both the memoir and the film, and it's an historical drama that opens in 1970 and concerns a well-to-do Brazilian family's response to the father, Rubens Paiva, a deputy in the Brazilian government, and a dissident in opposition to the current administration there, suddenly being picked up by sinister agents and spirited away with no explanation. So with Dad now missing and the country in political upheaval, it's up it's up to Eunice, his wife, and the mother of his children, and an activist herself, to try and find him and bring him home, or failing that, learn his fate. I'm Still Here is not only an excoriation, that's a ding word, of political corruption and a nation that loses its way, and a passionate look at a determined woman motivated by love and righteousness. It's a portrait of a family in crisis, and beautifully done. And it's a brilliant showcase for the actress, Fernanda Torres, as Eunice, wife, mother, and kind of a force of nature when it comes to protecting her clan. Torres just won the Golden Globe for Best Actress, so hopefully she'll get some acknowledgement when Oscar rolls around. But I don't care. This was great. It's in Portuguese with English subtitles. It is in select theaters. I'm Still Here. High quality. And we'll wrap things up.
Michael, one of the viewers, Michael D, says, Michael, are you quietly announcing this as, quote, leave the country weekend?
I don't know. I'm too rooted here. You know, I live in the Free Republic of California. I'm hoping, worst comes to worst, that we link up with Oregon, Washington, and Canada, and have our own little separate thing happening. That's the worst case scenario in my book. But in the meantime, no, we can watch these foreign films here in the States. So get ready for the last of the 5 films we're spotlighting today, and that would be a film with the title Santosh. And Santosh is an odd duck. It is England's submission for Best Foreign Film Oscar because it is largely in Hindi. And so consequently, you know, I guess they fudged the rules a little bit, but it is shot in India. It's shot by an Indian filmmaker. And nonetheless, England has put it forth as their foreign film submission. It's a really cool thing. India's caste system is central to Santosh. It's a procedural thriller about a woman enlisted into the police force when she inherits her husband's job as a constable in the rural north of the country after his death on the job during some riots. Now, one of the reasons she agrees to do it, and I've never heard this, you've inherited your late spouse's job. What kind of way is that to run a government? I don't know. Anyway, I guess it happens in the Trump administration, right? But anyway, she agrees to do it because she will otherwise lose the home she shared with her husband, which was provided due to his position with the police. So while on the job, she is brought in to investigate the murder of a low-caste girl in a nearby village. And she is overseen by a feminist inspector named Sharma, who has some sort of agenda going on. And the question is whether they're going to investigate by the book, whether, you know, the low caste village is either beyond their purview or too unimportant to give full police attention to. There's a lot of bigoted attacks from caste to caste in the movie. And I have to say, the actress who plays the newly widowed Santosh, Shoshana Goswami, is absolutely fantastic here. And, you know, when we think of procedurals, we think of Law and Order. Well, this is Law and Order India. And it's really a powerful and entertaining film worth checking out. There are moments when English is spoken, as is the case on the Indian subcontinent, but it is largely in a foreign tongue with English subtitles. If you can deal with that, so be it. But, you know, whether you speak Hindi or not, Santosh kicked ass. A good film.
Fantastic. And we have a couple of fun responses to some of these. I think it was somebody wrote, I think it was Rich, I don't know, wrote George Santosh. No, that was Trevor wrote George Santosh, and so did Rick. And then
that's a lie, Michael. That's a lie. Wait, if it's George Santos, it's certainly a lie, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. Tammy Stansel had a great one too when you were talking about "Wish You Were Here." She wrote, "Just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl." A little Pink Floyd call back to Wish You Were Here. So I like that.
That's fair, actually. So quickly, some TV suggestions. I'm a big fan of Harlan Coben, the novelist, and I've liked a lot of the movies and miniseries made from his novels. And he inked the deal with Netflix a few years ago to turn a bunch of his books into miniseries. And the latest dropped a couple weeks ago. It's called Missing You. Kind of like the schlocky John Waite power ballad, which, by the way, does figure into the story. It's fun, and increasingly addictive. And what the hell is going to happen next way? But it is nowhere near as good as last year's Coben offering, Fool Me Once. 2021's Stay Close are my favorite of his Netflix productions. 2020's The Stranger, all of which I recommend over Missing You. But this is okay if you have the time. His stuff is fun. I also wanted to, basically give a long wished nod to Day of the Jackal on Peacock. It is an update of the Frederick Forsyth intrigue espionage novel, which has spawned at least one well-regarded movie about the hunt for a cunning and ruthlessly efficient assassin. This series is really, really good, and it stars a very familiar actor as the Jackal himself, and that would be Eddie Redmayne, who is really wonderful. Lashana Lynch as the MI5, MI6 agent in the UK who decides it's her mission to bring him down. And Lashana Lynch was, of course, in the recent Daniel Craig James Bond movie as the agent who took over the 007 number. She's been in Captain Marvel and a few other Marvel projects. She's wonderful. It's really, really good. Charles Dance, the esteemed British character actor, plays a wealthy and amoral man who basically hires the Jackal to take care of some of his business, including targeting an Elon Musk type tech guy. So, there's a certain bit of Schadenfreude, watching something like this, maybe, but maybe not. I recommend The Day of the Jackal. It is quite good. And just to sort of wrap things up, I kind of want to mention a TV series I was a little reluctant to jump into because I thought maybe I'm suffering from overkill, and that would be Star Wars Skeleton Crew. And it's the story of 4 kids who are looking for their home planet after they get free. They steal a ship on their planet. They break the barrier that's protecting the planet, and then they're out into the wilds of space during one of the Star Wars eras. I believe it's post Return of the Jedi, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't have a concordance in front of me. But what it is essentially, as they go out there and then try to get back home, is the Goonies in space. And in a wonderful heel turn performance, Jude Law plays a guy who may be a Jedi, may be a criminal, who gets hooked up with these kids in their attempt to get back home. It is part of the John Watts, Christopher Ford creative team, and Jon Favreau is involved, the guy who has overseen a lot of these Star Wars TV shows to great effect. I thought it was really a lot of fun. It is already up in its entirety at Disney Plus, and I think we should wrap it up right there. What do you say?
That sounds good, Michael. A lot of good stuff and stuff that isn't terrible to watch as well. Teacher Lori G said the Harlan Coben book adaptations on Netflix are good. Coben is producer on them, so has influences in the making of them. And then there was something from A Golf Twitler who says David Lynch was carried away on a rainbow. May he rest in peace. And
yeah, absolutely. I'm not averse to just mentioning in passing Mr. Lynch, because I do think, in my position, it's the kind of thing that maybe I should address. I know that you guys mentioned it earlier in the week. This guy was such an independent, so original, kind of homespun, right? And freaky. Writer director David Lynch, his movies were like dreams, and you got to think, how does a guy like this get so much success and acclaim? But he deserved it all, and his TV opus Twin Peaks it caught the imagination of the country for a time, and people became obsessed with the murder mystery plot and the weirdly colorful characters. This guy was somebody special, and he is missed. And I dug him and his filmography big time, and he had real kind of strange, offbeat personal charm. If you ever saw him interviewed, David Lynch, rest in peace.
And Teacher Laurie also said you can find his music on Apple Music as well. So Michael Snyder, thank you. You can find Michael at thevoicesf.org. And like we say, he did come in on the rainbow. He also goes.
See you later, everybody. Go Warriors.
See you later. Go Warriors. Right. I do want to mention Harry Magnan donation, $5 donation, I think it is, says, I'm looking forward to the Mark Thompson special guest appearance on the Michael Shure Show. Yeah, we'll take that under advisement. He'd be a great guest. Thank you, Harry. And of course, this is Mark's show. He will be back. And it's been a pleasure and a privilege hosting it this week again, and look forward to being back again eventually.
I found this story real fast.
Yeah, here's the story. Raccoons mistake Cybertruck for a trash can. This was late December. I only saw it last week, but yeah, it's fantastic. I can't love it more. They think that it's a trash can, but it did look like there might have been trash in that Cybertruck, by the way, just as an aside. I hadn't seen those photos. It is Tony's birthday. Happy birthday, Tony. May it be a happy, healthy year. And hopefully you have a good time at the arcade. And Kim, thanks for everything you do. This is the last of Mark Thompson show in the Biden administration, but we'll cover the next administration as only this audience deserves and demands, and we'll cover it head to toe, roof to platform. So again, thanks everybody. Have a good weekend, and a mix of people will see you here next week, right, Kim?
That's right. A mix of people will indeed see you all next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Michael, for filling in. You're awesome.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for all the support.